Hey guys, as this month comes to an end, that is also the end of Men's Mental Health Month. And unfortunately, I just found some posts of women talking about how much this month sucks and how much men's mental health sucks, too. So, yeah. And it actually all begins with this tweet with 49,000 plus likes from It's a Gundam, which apparently ended up being a satirical subreddit. However, let me read this for you, and then this is what got me to look into this further and find like actual serious unironic posts, which are arguably even more toxic than the satirical one. So, yeah, let's just read this. My husband lost his job and I'm considering leaving him. My husband is a plastic surgeon and he previously made $500,000 to $700,000 a year with bonuses at his practice. He was recently let go due to these reasons. He's a doctor and has only been able to find general practice work. His highest offer has been $250,000 a year, and he's considering accepting the offer. I know we need money, but I don't want him to get used to working a low salary and not working hard to get back up to the mid-sixes that we accustomed. He used to give me $10,000 a month allowance, which has been slashed to $3,000. I had to stop getting my nails, hair, and Gosh dang it. I had to stop getting my nails, hair, and salon services. My monthly shopping has been reduced significantly. I know he might recover, but he might not. I know he might recover, but he might not. And I also know my worth and what I am accustomed. I feel just gross having to accept this sort of lifestyle. I know there are other men at his old practice that clear more than $500K a year, and there's no reason I can't get one of those men. We don't have kids yet, and I just don't want to settle for some loser with mediocre ambitions. What should I do? I'm afraid if I leave him too soon, I might find myself in an even more difficult place. Please advise. I know I am a mod here. Wait, what? But even I need advice also. Gosh, that's a funny ending, right? It ended up being one of the mods of that subreddit. But yeah, as mentioned, like apparently this ended up being satire and that subreddit was banned according to this reader's context that was added at some point. Now, if you don't get the whole satirical aspect of this, let me try and provide some context. So I guess that subreddit was called Female Dating Strat Pros. And there is a subreddit already called Female Dating Strategy. So I suppose it's a satire to that subreddit, which that subreddit does have a lot of posts, which I think men and women would agree that a lot of the posts there are very toxic. Interestingly enough, it seems that subreddit's pretty dead now. I guess at some point they tried to push everyone over to some website, and a lot of the Redditors weren't having that. They didn't want to go over there, although there were a decent amount that did. It's not like it completely failed. But yeah, that's what's going on with that. I don't really know too much. Like, there's probably a bunch of context I'm missing because I'm, I don't follow that subreddit really. But that's like my very rough understanding of what happened. Anyways, long story short, after reading that satirical post, I decided to go check out like some real posts made by that group of people. And as mentioned, I found a particularly interesting one about Men's Mental Health Month. So we're going to take a look at that now. From 3 days ago in a post titled, "How do we feel about Men's Mental Health Month?" Saying, I care for people's mental health in general, but I kind of get irritated when I remember how many men in a gender discussion try to point out how most suicides are carried out by men, then disregard that females attempt it more just by less brutal/lethal means, which results in a higher survival rate. I understand men can feel ashamed to have some sappy emotions, but I think women do too. Women are often called catty, dramatic things when we express emotions or anger. Some of the top responses, let's take a look at those. Men's greatest mental health illness is delusions of grandeur, and society supports it. Giving them their own month just feeds into this. Their suicide rates counts all men who kill their wives and children before turning the gun on themselves. So yeah, their suicide rate is a bit higher when you count how much they murder suicide, so they don't have to face the consequences of killing us. All right, let's pause there for a minute. That's obviously a very awful thing to do, whether you're a man or a woman. And here we have a headline titled, Men and Women Kill Their Children in Roughly Equal Numbers, and We Need to Understand Why, by theconversation.com, which has 100% NewsGuard certification. They go on to cite that one of the most recent comprehensive national filicide studies in Australia documented 238 cases between 2000 and 2012. This study mirrored trends elsewhere, with male and female perpetrators represented in roughly equal numbers. Now, while that is a study from Australia, the post we're talking about regarding Men's Mental Health Month, well, the women over there are not talking about mental health specifically for men living in the USA. They're talking about men's mental health in general, so it still seems like a fine study to cite. They go on to say, research indicates that gender does in fact play a role in the type of crime committed and the motivations behind it. Accidental life ending of children, for instance, are more likely to be the result of neglect among mothers and abuse among fathers and stepfathers. This reflects what we know about gender patterns and childcare responsibility and domestic and family violence. In cases where children's lives are ended intentionally, women are more likely to end babies and newborns, particularly in circumstances of unwanted pregnancies. Such offenders are more likely to be young and have low levels of social support, although it is increasingly reported among older women. Now, ultimately, I'm not trying to use this information as some kind of own against women. I think the only obvious good approach is to say that this is an issue. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Anyone doing this sort of crime, that's not something we want. That's awful. It's tragic. It's awful. It's horrific. So the women on that forum trying to use Men's Mental Health Month and family tragedies against men seems like an extremely toxic thing to do. And it doesn't seem like that's really going to help anyone. It doesn't seem like it's going to help stop future victims of crimes like this. It's just making things worse, probably. So I question their approach to talking about this topic. And we only saw 2 responses. Should probably get back to some of those, shouldn't we? In response to the other comment that we just read, this says, also, arguably, men are more egotistical and might think less about how their life being ended will impact others, so they're less likely to push through for the sake of everyone else. This entirely different response to the OP reads, I'm in favor of it. Let's talk strategies about how we can get them to stop going on and on about themselves and their struggles with the patriarchy they created and fight to maintain the other 11 months of the year. Someone else saying, good point. Hopefully I make sense about how I feel like some of them think they have it harder overall, which bothers me. I'm in favor too of what you mentioned though. If they take it seriously and accept some accountability for their issues, it would be a good thing. But my guess is that it's just a public, nobody cares about us, poor men, boo-hoo. Another way to extort more emotional labor from women and make excuses for why they can't function in life at all, like the current wave of men blaming their utter unwillingness to do anything in the household on their ADHD. Most men don't support each other, and if they do, they just spin tales about evil feminism destroying their lives and encouraging each other to be alpha. None of them own up to the role they play in their own demise. Okay, look, some men can definitely be toxic. But if like these women are thinking that like all men are just hanging out with each other, trying to be chads and alphas, are talking about evil feminism, and like, no. You know what men do when they hang out? Like play video games, maybe play some cards, grab a beer, and just like laugh about silly things. Oh, go on a hike and push rocks down a hill, you know? That's more what men actually do. So yeah, some people like her probably just know what they see online and then think that's like 100% the reality. No, it's not. A response to that one reading, yeah, women will exhaust every possibility before giving up, even when they're feeling terrible, because they always feel like it's all their own fault, whereas men blame everyone else and their mother and don't try to get better. I know what it's like when your life feels absolutely meaningless and hopeless. I've felt like ending my own life before, and I still knew giving up wasn't an option. Yeah, you're saying that in a thread where everyone is blaming men for everything. Great point, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of toxicity in that forum and a lot of really bad points in my opinion, and I don't think that stuff is going to benefit them too much. I think a lot of the women there talking about this stuff and getting this vitriolic and toxic, it's only going to make their lives like even more unhappy, which is sad. So I am kind of worried about that. I was raised by 2 very strong women, my mom and my grandma, rest in peace, Grams, and I got a lot of respect for women, especially, like I said, being raised by 2 very strong women who made a lot of sacrifices and worked super hard to provide. And like, I love my dad too. It's just he wasn't really around too much at all until like much later in my life. And now rest in peace, Pops too. But point is, I do absolutely respect and admire a lot of the stuff that women do. Like I said, though, my concern is that like these sort of discussions are just really toxic. And it's just going to make things worse for men and women and for everyone. And also, the women saying those sort of things about men on that forum, they probably don't treat women very well either. Those are the sort of women who will act all nice to other women on the surface. In reality, they're probably some of the most toxic to other women. They probably treat other women worse than they treat the men they're talking about. So, sad stuff. As always, thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you and your time. Consider letting me know your thoughts on this topic in the comments below. And extra shout out to the men on this one, obviously. Bros, we got like, 1.5 days left of Men's Mental Health Month. I guess I should probably leave like a little bit of advice here. Make of it what you will. You don't gotta listen to me or put any weight on this, but perhaps it might help some people. I think it's important to have something you can go back to that helps you get your mind off everything, whether that's art, whether it's hiking, whether it's martial arts, lifting weights, something that's not something bad, right? If you get the meaning, where you can kind of pull away from all of the stuff, the craziness going on, especially with the technology these days. You're bombarded nonstop with things. It is important to have something good that you can go to that just takes your mind off all of it. And there's two main benefits to that. The one, the obvious, I already stated, which is that it takes your mind off all the craziness. The second benefit is that if it is something good, again, art, hiking, something physical, something creative, not only is working on that going to take your mind off the other, but it will give you something to think positively about. You'll be able to progress in that thing. And even if you're not able to work on that thing at a certain time in the day, you're busy with the nonsense, you'll still be able to think like, well, you know what? This might be going bad, but that's going good. It is important to have something like that, in my opinion. So that's really all I got to say here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you and your time once again. And I look forward to seeing you in the comments as well as in the next segment.